Do you hate your body, or at least part of your body? If you do, you're not alone, and these are all traits of body dysmorphia. In today's episode, I'm going to be discussing my experience with this and how it's affected me, and the tactics that I've used for myself and with other clients to overcome this. And one thing that I noticed within the community is that there is a lot of self-hate, a lot of body image hate, a lot of being ashamed of your body, a lot of being embarrassed about your body, not liking it, that type of thing. And it's a lot more of it than I would like to see. Now, these are all traits of body dysmorphia. And so that's pretty much just a hatred of maybe a part of your body or your whole body. And I just want to preface this by saying I'm not a doctor or a psychologist, but I, even myself, have personally had these types of thoughts, and I've worked with a lot of people who have had them as well. And so the following things that I'm going to be talking about today are strategies and tactics that I've personally used or used with people that have made massive progress in these areas. And so everybody at some point in their life, well, pretty much everybody, unless they're a narcissist, experiences some form of this where they don't like something about their body or they don't like their whole body. And it's a sliding scale. It's not you're either one, you either do or you don't. It happens in degrees. And so for some people, it might just be one part of their body. Maybe you don't like your tummy or your thighs, or maybe it's your chin or something like that. Whereas, as I said, others, you could just not like anything about it. Now, where this becomes a problem is it causes you to act in a certain way. And so, for example, from my personal experience, the way that it materializes is I actually won't take my shirt off in the gym, and I don't like taking it off in public unless I'm lean. And so I, even myself, as a professional, as someone who understands these higher level concepts, even experience it myself. And so that just shows that it is rife within the community. And I am aware of this, and this is a behavior that has gradually slipped back into my life without realizing. And so I just want everybody to know that it happens. It's something that happens, and you're not alone. So the first thing that we probably need to talk about when we get into something like this is, where do these feelings that you're experiencing come from? And so from my experience and what I've learned over the years is that the way we feel about anything, or the way that we act, is a learned behavior. And so it's something that's happened to us in our lives, which has caused us to feel a certain way about a certain thing. And so for most of us, this is probably things that have occurred in your childhood, but things can happen in your adult life as well, which do cause you to act a certain way. Or it could be some beliefs that our parents installed in us that have made us to think that we need to be a certain way, maybe that we need to be skinny or whatever, and that it's not okay to be overweight, that type of stuff. And then we start to associate a feeling with that experience that we've had. Maybe we were teased in a group when we were at school for being overweight. Maybe we were left out of sports teams or picked last on sports teams. Maybe we didn't get asked to the school ball. Any of those types of experiences which hurt your feelings and create a negative experience. And then we create an association with that negative experience that it's because of the way that we look. It's because we might be fat. It is because of your thighs. It's because you have belly fat or anything along the lines. And that creates that association or that belief inside yourself that you say to yourself that if my body was different, if I was skinny, if it was better, then my life would be better. I would be happier. Now, this might not necessarily be your exact story, but there's probably some commonalities in it if you think introspectively, if you think about your life and the way that you think, and then you think about your upbringing and your childhood, that type of stuff, and you do some self-reflection, you'll probably find that at some point you've had these negative experiences which has caused you to think this way. And anyway, all of the stuff that we do is brought from our experiences. And you probably won't even remember some of the actual experiences, but there might be some points in your life where you can look back to and remember little bits of it. So the first thing that when we're working through something like this, when you're working through that, you've got this issue or this experience, and you understand that you talk about your way in a certain way, or you feel about your body in a certain way, is trying to understand where those feelings actually come from. Where do they stem from? Where was the base of them? And so for me, personally, I was a big kid. I was overweight. I played sport, but I was an ice hockey goalie, so that should illustrate a bit of a picture for you. Have you seen Mighty Ducks? And they've got like Goldberg, like there's that common stereotype that you put the fat kid in goal. I wasn't quite Goldberg level, but you get the idea. And anyway, I played at a high level, and every year when fitness testing rolled around, I absolutely hated it because I couldn't do a pull-up and I was the slowest runner. And even like this is, I'm talking from like the age of like sort of 10 to 12, even up to like being 18, that type of thing. I was generally one of the most unfit or like the worst runners or the weakest as far as like pull-ups and things like that go. And yeah, I got teased and there was name calling, like all of that type of stuff. Like kids are cruel, teenagers are cruel. Like, no, they don't give a fuck about your feelings or anything like that. And so I've got this association of that still deep inside me somewhere, that at some point, even as a mature adult, 15 years on, I'm still reluctant to take my shirt off in a gym that I'm part owner of. Like it's pretty much my home, because of the way my experiences as a child. And so when you start to understand where it comes from, it can help you rationalize it, that it was a learned belief about yourself, and that you weren't born with it, which means that you can learn a new way of thinking. All right. Now, the older you do get, the harder it does get. And even as you can notice with myself, like I understand all these processes that I'm going through tonight, and I still personally struggle with them. And so it's not a matter of being completely fixed. It's about trying to make improvement on from where you're at into being in a better place where you don't actually like hate yourself as a whole. So first step is understanding where it comes from. Now, the next step is understanding that the way that you're thinking is not actually helpful. It's not beneficial, and it's likely going to lead you to tactics that are actually, in the long run, not going to help you in any way whatsoever. So let's dive into that a little bit now. This is where understanding how the way that you think actually affects your actions. So for an example, let's use, you think to yourself, I'm fat, I'm overweight. The first thing that you go to is that scarcity mindset. I need to diet, I need less food. And then the action that you start to take is you start to eat less food because you know that eating too much food is going to make you gain weight. It's a logical thought process. And so you're trying to fix your fatness as fast as possible so you don't eat. You start skipping meals, you start just eating in a pure scarcity mindset. But the result of that is you can't maintain it. And so you get so hungry, at some point you stuff your face, you lose control, and you end up eating way more than you would had you just had normal meals leading up to that point. And you end up putting yourself in that calorie surplus and you gain weight, or if you're lucky, you just stay at the same place as what you are. So you starved yourself, overate, and then you just stayed level. Okay. And so that all happened, this whole process happened because you had this negative thought about yourself and you thought the solution was this quick fix. Now, the next thought, maybe it's something like, I suck, or like you're thinking about yourself in the gym. I'm not good enough. I can't do anything that everybody else is doing. What's the point? That type of thought process. And you just give up and you stop trying, and then you don't go to the gym. And so what's the result of you not going to the gym? Well, you stay the same. Maybe you don't get any better. like you're just not actually moving towards any improvement in your life whatsoever. So once again, you thought a certain way, so then your actions started to actually mirror the end result of the way that you thought. So those negative thoughts were occurring, were making you perform actions that aren't beneficial to your life. Now, these examples that I've given, they're usually actually, for most people, fleeting. Okay, so you might experience like out of a week, maybe 2 or 3 bad days, and then like 2 or 3 4 good days. Okay, but these small blips where you're not always negative are a massive reason why you're not making the progress that you probably want to be making. And so if you think about it, like 3 or 4 shit days of thinking negatively about yourself and then taking these actions which are causing you to maybe not train as hard, not eat well, any of those things that are actually going to move you towards improvement, followed by 3 good days, means that you're actually in a neutral position. Okay, you haven't got any better. You might not have got worse, but you actually haven't got better. But it's all due to the negative shit thinking that you have about yourself. You're thinking about how much you hate yourself, and that's causing you to act the way. You think you're good, like the way that you're doing it, like by eating less or something like that might help. But the result is it actually fucks your progress up, and you just stay in that same place as before. And if you're lucky, you stay in the same place as before, because a lot of the times you actually end up going backwards and getting worse. And then this makes you feel shitter about yourself, and it becomes this really, really negative, vicious cycle. Okay. So that's what I really wanted to illustrate there, is how and why thinking that way is not helpful or isn't going to help. So it's that understanding. So understanding, first of all, where the thoughts are coming from, and then second, understanding why they're not actually helpful to changing you. All right. Now, this is the part where most people would tell you to love yourself the way you are, right? Like giving you that positive stuff. Now, while there's a lot of merit to that, I think that advice does need context. And I think it needs context to be specifically to where you personally are in your journey. And I don't like giving wishy-washy advice, so I'd like to give you some like objective things to think about. And a way that you can be objective about this next part that I'm going to talk about is through actually a body fat test to see if you're actually in the healthy range. Okay, and so now the healthy range increases, so how much body fat you have on your body, the healthy range increases as you do get older, because as inevitably as you get older, you are going to carry more fat as you age. So I'm not going to list off all the different healthy ranges depending on your age, but you can get a body fat test to find out where you're at, whether you're in that healthy range or if you're carrying too much body fat. And the reason I say that is because if you are in a healthy range and you just have a little bit of fluff on you and you want to be leaner, but you're still experiencing all this negative body image stuff that I'm talking about, then starting to put more emphasis on loving your body for how it performs and what it can do is very important. Focusing on what your body can do is going to yield more positive action than if you focus on all the stuff that you hate. Just like I was explaining before, that's why it's important, because if you can focus on what your body can do, you're going to build some momentum, you're going to build more positivity. Okay. And you likely don't even realize that you're necessarily doing it. Okay. And so that's what I want you to just be creating a little bit more awareness about. So just reminding you that it's negative thought equals ineffective action, which equals a shitty result, which equals more negative thoughts. And then that just repeats and you end up having that shitty, unhappy life. And now, don't get me wrong, if you want to be a little bit leaner and you've been advised that being a little bit leaner is going to improve your sporting performance, then that's absolutely fine to want to change things, and you want to, because that's bringing your motivation from a positive way rather than a place of self-hate. Now, where I don't think that sort of wishy-washy, love yourself even if you're love yourself for who you are sort of advice is very appropriate is when you're not in that healthy range. Now, when you're not in that healthy range, I think a lot of people need to hit rock bottom or hit a point that is going to actually help them elicit change. And telling yourself to love your body the way it is can be contradictory to that change process. It can be a hindrance into that change process. Because when you're truly not happy about something, and this goes for everything in your life, maybe it's how much money you make, or if you're drinking too much piss, or you've got some other form of addiction, using those feelings that you're so unhappy is going to actually help you do something about it. Now, with that all being said, I think it's really important that you approach it from a certain way. I'm not telling you that you should approach this from, I hate myself, so I'm going to change. I'm suggesting that you start to introduce this one single phrase into the way that you think about yourself. And that phrase is, I'm a work in progress. That phrase, I'm a work in progress, it helps kind of rationalize where you are at right now. Okay. It states that you are not necessarily happy or content with where you are, but you're not hating yourself during the process of being better. Because we know that these thoughts about hating yourself leads to ineffective actions which end up making things worse, what we need to try and do is move you into a more positive state. But the love yourself wishy-washy stuff, when you are actually, objectively that you may need to lose some weight because you are carrying too much, you're just lying to yourself at that point, and you can see through your own bullshit at that point. I could tell myself I love myself as much as I fucking want. If I'm carrying too much fat and I can see it in the mirror, and I've had a body fat test that tells me I'm carrying too much fat, then it doesn't matter how much I tell myself I love myself. I'm not going to fucking believe it. And if you can, and that works for you, then that's great. As I said at the start, I'm talking from my personal experience on my journey and working with other people that this has helped. And that I am a work in progress, it brings me into a state where I'm like, cool, I'm not where I want to be, but I'm doing something about it, and I'm doing the right actions to help me get to that next level, to get to where I want to be. It brings you into a mental state that can help you break through that cycle that you're likely experiencing. So I highly suggest that you try that statement, and you, rather than working from that place of necessarily hatred of yourself or your body or what you're capable of doing, into that state of, I am a work in progress. Now, finally, the last step in this process is trust and optimism. And what I mean by this is, I mean trusting that you're on the right path, trusting that your coaches would not lead you astray, trusting that if you stick with this long enough, you will see results, trusting that if you're consistent, you're going to see change, being optimistic about your future. Because when you waver, when you start to self-doubt, you start to bring in all of those old actions that I was discussing earlier. And so what this means is, like, maybe you've been eating healthy for 4 weeks and you're like, oh, I haven't lost as much weight as I want to. It's been 4 weeks. You need to be patient. You ate unhealthy for 4 years. You're not going to undo that in 4 weeks. And you've had this unhealthy behavior of yo-yo dieting, being up and down for extremely long periods of time. You need to be patient in this process and trust that your coaches have your best interests at heart, and they're teaching you from a place of experience where they've seen this work and they know the strategy is going to work. So that there's a massive amount of trust that you guys have to put in us as your coaches in order to make this work, because if you don't trust it, you will revert back to old behaviors, which will then create this self-fulfilling prophecy, which is, I can't lose weight, diets don't work for me, or eating this way doesn't work for me. And it's not that that way doesn't work for you. It means that you just haven't stuck with it long enough in order to keep making progress. That action of every time you doubt, where you deviate and go back to the old way of doing things, is just taking those steps backwards. Had you keep trusted or have you keep trusting doing what you were meant to be doing what you're taught to do, you would be moving a step closer. Then who knows, had you not reverted back and had a couple of weeks of yo-yo dieting, that next time you put on that belt, it could have been a size smaller. You might have been able to do 2 more pull-ups than you used to be able to do. You might have been able to run further without resting. And these are all signs that you're progressing. And then that would have built your motivation and you would have kept going. But because you didn't trust in the process, you reverted back to your old way, and then you slowed that whole journey down. And so you need to have that trust and that relentless optimism in this process that it is going to work for you, and that you can break the fucked up cycle, and that you will be able to achieve what we're trying to help you achieve. But it starts with that trust. So kind of just recapping on what we've discussed, there's been a lot in that. And so understand where your feelings about yourself come from. Now, this might bring up some deep stuff, but it's really important that you know where they come from, because then you can understand that it's a learned behavior, and anything that is learned can be unlearned, and new ways of thinking can be learned as well. Understand that the way you're thinking is not helpful, it's not beneficial, and it's likely going to lead you to tactics that in the long run are not going to help you. And when I talk long run, I'm talking like a couple of weeks. You're not going to see benefit from them. If you are in the healthy body fat range, get your test so that you can be objective about it. Then bring yourself from a place of a bit more positivity, because we know that positivity is going to help you perform more positive actions. If objectively you are carrying too much body fat, then use that as motivation to get yourself out of there, but introduce that phase, I am a work in progress. And then finally, trust the process and have that optimism.